Hi, I'm BJ, and this is the Arcane Alienist Podcast. Hey everybody, how you doing out there? Doing well, I hope. Um, all right, I want to talk a little more about the Black Sword hack. I know I've mentioned it the last couple episodes. I think uh, I have, because I did back on Kickstarter the Ultimate Chaos Edition of the Black Sword hack. So I got a hardback. It's a hardback copy, A5 sized. This is published by the Merry Mushman. You can order it on their website as a PDF or as a book. The SRD is also free on their website. It doesn't have all the contents of the book, but it has most of it. But this was, of course, this is a game by the author of the game is uh, Alexandre Jeanette. Kobayashi is the name he goes by. So on the cover it says a game by Kobayashi, which I don't. It makes me think of the test on the Kobayashi Maru, the from Star Trek, the test you have to take to be in order to be able to be in the command division. Um, anyway, what the actual Ultimate Chaos Edition has that is not in the SRD is it contains, of course, artwork, some pretty cool, evocative, fantasy artwork, sword and sorcery artwork. It's also got um, two adventures for starting out as new characters, and it has a sample city, the city of Heimdallr, which is just the rules themselves want you to generate your own campaign setting, and then it's got everything else that's in here is actually in the SRD. So, but those are good starter adventures. I know I mentioned it. I think I ran my son through and some of his friends through the shorter of the two starter adventures using the Black Sword Act. They had a good time. They enjoyed it. They had asked to do some dark fantasy stuff. So I had been thinking about the Black Sword Hack for a little while now, and so we used that, and it all went well. Um, so maybe I'll review the games in a little more detail. There are plenty of reviews of the Black Sword Hack out there for you to find, so I don't want to retread too much ground that's already been covered. But if you're not familiar with it, just real briefly, I'll thumb through the book. I will so uh, you got a forward by Bill King, and there's just all kinds of references to the classics of sword and sorcery, to Robert Howard, to H.P. Lovecraft, to Michael Moorcock, Fritz Leiber, Jack Vance. So a lot of that Appendix N stuff that is not the Tolkien-esque fantasy, but the more sword and sorcery type of classic fantasy uh, pulp literature. So, and it's got a really nice, this is kind of more at the end, but it's got, a bibliography with suggested readings, which includes, um, those type of works, along with some, let me flip back here and let me just skip to the end and explain to say what's in there. So some of the literature that they suggest are works of Joe Abercrombie, Pal Anderson, Jesse Bullington, Michael Chabon. I just recently read the last book I read was actually Gentlemen of the Road, which is the one they recommend. Michael Chabon, excellent read. Um, Robert Howard, uh, uh, Cameron Hurley. Let's see, William King, Fritz Leiber, Michael Moorcock, Fred Saberhagen, Jessica Amanda Salmonson, Michael Shea, Carl Sherrill, Daryl Schweitzer, Jack Vance, Carl Edward Wagner, Gene Wolfe. They recommend comics, the Maze World comics, Berserk. Berserk has also, I think, been turned into an anime. Um, the Tales of Telguth, Bone, which is a kind of a classic comic book at this point. I think Bone started in the late '80s, maybe or maybe in the '90s, but Bone. Um, Quest for the Time Bird. So yeah, some really good source material. In fact, I took a screenshot of this page when I got it and sent it to my son and said, "Hey, if you want to steep yourself in some classic fantasy, here's some places to look." Um, anyway, so what do we have in here? Well, we've got it's a very light, very quick read. This book is only 108 pages um, from you know from the which let's see what is the official page one. Of course, there's a couple inserts inside the cover, but yep, from the 6543. Wow, I'm missing a couple pages. I think the pages are off, numbering off a little bit. Anyway, so maybe actually less than 108 pages. Um, anyway, like I said, you got a forward, you've got your table of contents, and then it goes right into the rules, how turns work, using an attribute test. So it's all rules light, simple, fast paced. It's a roll under system. For your attributes, a roll of 1 is always a critical success. A roll of 20 is always a critical failure. A critical failure means you have to roll your doom die. There's threat levels, so if you're engaged against an enemy, they've all got a level which you factor into your rolls to so that it's harder to overcome uh, monsters or NPCs that have a higher level than you. Uh, I do like that they suggest group tests. So if the entire party is trying to sneak past a guard or a monster, if the majority of the people pass, the whole group passes. You don't have that one person who ruins it for everybody by stepping on a twig or tripping and falling. uh, they do use advantage and disadvantage. Um, and then they use usage die. It's interesting here that unlike the black hack, that you're not using usage die for arrows and rations. It says that the author says that's pretty simple to track. So they use usage die for more abstract resources like influence you might have garnered with a noble or a merchant, favorites you might call on. And so, but then you roll the die, and if you roll a 1 or 2, it goes down to the next lower die. Once you're down to a D4, a 1 or 2 means that the resource is depleted. So that's a good way. I think I would even import that into other games. I think when I want to keep track of things like favor and patronage and things like that, that's a lot easier to me than trying to. It's enough of a. It's not too restrictive. Um, it's not like, well, you get 3 favors and that's it, because social relationships are a little more complex than that. We're using distances, kind of abstract, close, nearby, far away, and distant. If it ever comes to it, perception is based on an intelligence check. Doom. This is probably the key thing. One of the key things for the Black Sword hack is everybody has a Doom die. It is a D6 usage die. Um, so in game terms, you roll your Doom die. There are a couple things. If you make a critical failure on an attribute test, you roll the Doom die. If you have a certain gift based on how you build your character that requires you to roll the Doom die, particularly for supernatural stuff, casting spells or trying to summon and control a demon or an elemental spirit or something like that. Um, or what happens is on your turn you can do uh, 2 things on your turn. I believe is how that works. Um, yeah, you have 2 actions on your turn. If you do the same thing twice, you have to roll the doom dice. So if you want to move and attack, you're fine. If you want to, you can do 2 different things. But if you want to attack twice, or you want to move twice to cover more distance, you have to roll your doom die. And the narrative behind this is when you become an adventurer and start trying to dare at great things, uh, you immediately draw the attention of the forces of law and chaos, and they're constantly monitoring you. And that's what the Doom die does. It's the fortunes of law and chaos, uh, intervening in your life. When your Doom die rolls out or runs out, So it starts at a D6. Once you get to a 1 or 2, it goes down to a D4, and then at 1 or 2 of the D4, it's gone. You're at a disadvantage on all of their tests for the day. So your fortune has run its course, and it's time to call it a day. You're going to slog through the rest of the day. Uh, the other thing is you can call on doom, so you can immediately roll the doom die if you still have a doom die available, and result and factor that result into your success. So you subtract it because again we're trying to roll under. So let's say your strength is a 13. You make an attack. You roll a 14. You're 2 off. You might roll that doom die to try to get it down to a 13 for a success. And then it's downgraded. Of course, if it's at a D4, once you use it, that's it. You're out of you're out of you're doomed for the rest of the day. Combat is pretty simple. Players roll all the dice when they roll an attack. If they're trying to beat a strength for a melee weapon or a dex for a ranged weapon. When they're defending themselves, and defending doesn't count against your actions, you can defend yourself against every attack that comes at you. You can choose to parry with the strength test or dodge with a dex test. Uh, a failed dice means you take damage. A failed defense, a critical failure means your armor is ignored because in this one, armor doesn't change your defensive value. It counts as damage reduction. So on a critical failure in defending yourself, which is effectively a critical hit for the opponent, you don't get that damage reduction from your armor. You can use your shield to give yourself advantage. It doesn't change your. It doesn't take. It's not damage reduction, but you get advantage for parrying melee blows. Um, Critical failure though means your shield is shattered. Two-handed weapons give you advantage on their damage die. So not just the damage on the. You don't get it on the attack, but you roll the damage die twice and take the better result. See, you can. There's some maneuvers you can do. You can roll the doom die when you make an attack to break your weapon's opponent, disarm them, do more damage. There's several of these here. Let's see, anything else? Hit points. Once you're at 0 hit points, the character is helpless and unable to do anything except talk feebly. Once the fight is over, or the character is dragged to a safe place and they're effectively away from the fight, you roll a d6. On a 6, you go ahead and die. But on a 1 to 5, you get scratched. 2, 1 random piece of your equipment is destroyed. 3, you're impaired. You're disadvantage of dex test for the rest of the session. Injured, disadvantage on all attribute tests for 4. 5, butchered. Lose 1 point of. You roll a d6, and you permanently lose 1 point of strength or dexterity. Now you get to increase those ability scores when you level up. So that doesn't completely ruin a character. Surviving character rolls a d4 and gets that many hit points back. So your hit points are equal to your Constitution score. So they should be somewhere between 8 and 13. And then you gain a hit point when you level up, just one. So low hit points, low damage because all weapons are doing a d6 damage. So you don't get that constant inflation of at some point everybody's in the combat's got 95 to 100 hit points, and you're plinking away at it with d6s and d8s. You can take a short rest, which is an hour, a long rest, which must be at least 6 hours in a relatively safe place. And it's kind of similar to kind of modern 5e stuff. And those are the rules for interacting with the world. That's it. Character creation, you roll your 6 attributes, 2d6 in order, and then you convert them to just scores between 8 and 13. And then you pick an origin. And before I think I'll make a character. I say that as though I don't know what's coming. I've already recorded myself making a character a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to plug it in at the end of this episode. So we'll get a pre-recorded segment coming up where I actually go through and make the character. And I may repeat. It's been a while since I recorded it, so I may repeat some of these basic rules. But let's see, when you level up, you get gifts. There are gifts associated with law, with chaos, and with balance. The idea here is you're supposed to be kind of in this Moorcock cycle where you're kind of nearing the end of the world, and law and chaos are struggling, and then the balance is starting to slip. And when one wins out over the other, that's the end of the world. Um, and you get caught up in it. You can take gifts of balance, chaos, or law. Um, and you may be champion. Lean into one side or choose from both. So we've got, uh, warlocks. Depending on your background, can create pacts with demons. The shamans can be spirit alliances. Um, there's a forbidden knowledge background, which is effectively makes you a spellcaster, and that gives you sorcery. There's some spells here that you randomly roll for. There are fairy ties. Ties are the classic, more sort of fairy realm of Celtic myth. Um, there's a sort of twisted science, so you can get into some sort of weird um, artificer types of stuff, and those are all associated with different backgrounds. Uh, the author suggests that of these what is it, one, two, three, four, five sorts of backgrounds, you only allow a couple in your world, um, because if you can sort of dilute the theme if you just make it all make them all there. Um, they don't say don't do it. Certainly, a world can have all of that. I think what they say is actually uh, use this responsibly. The game gives you rules for sorcery, demon pact, spirits, alliance, fairy ties, and twisted science. It doesn't mean you have to include all of them. Choosing only a couple will make your campaign more strongly themed. Some powers may also be mastered by NPCs only. Um, and so, uh, yeah, I guess it's just kind of, you be forewarned if you use them all. There are runic weapons, similar to like how to based obviously on Stormbringer, and how to use them. There's a bestiary of some monsters, and there's a lot of things that you might think are missing here, but they're really easy to kind of cobble together based on reskinning. If you want a wider selection of monsters, what do you find on the corpse? So there's some things for looting, you know, your monsters and NPCs you defeat. And then the book moves into a section of creating your world. And it asks, and I'll go through an example of this as well. That I'll record another segment on that. But as law and chaos in your world, what, is the overarching enemy law, or is it chaos? And there's some prompts for fleshing out the nature of law and chaos. What do their servants look like? Um, it says take a blank map and note the name of each place as you see fit, and it gives you um, I think 16 generic sorts of fantasy locales or kingdoms or nations that you could work on. The Forbidden City, Mercenary Bands, Amber Enclave, Golden Archipelago, Northern Raiders, Merchant League, Flotsam Kingdom, Eastern Principalities, Pict Territories, Iron Horde, the Land of the Black Pyramids, the Grey Spires Dominion, the Last City of a Dying Species, a City of Thieves, a Dust Empire, a Theocracy. Um, I think probably you could just go with the generic names, or you could come up with a proper name for each one to kind of make the world your own, uh, uniquely your own. The end is nigh. It asks you to sort of come up with some cataclysmic events that may be kind of happening. You've got some tables for each of those types of countries or locations to say, is an adventure seed? What could be going on there to spark an adventure? I think there's six entries for each one. What about the balance? To explain where balance is in the game. So here we've got law and chaos, but we've also got balance with a capital B as a balance, as a sort of mitigating force that sort of is keeping the world from ending. And in the end game, your campaign may end with characters having to side with law or chaos. If that's the case, they lose their gifts associated with the opposite side. Um, if the characters take different sides, let them duke it out. That's interesting. A little PvP stuff. Um, and it says many fantasy settings are stuck on the status quo. Rulers can be killed, but new ones take their places. Uh, this world is meant to be saved or at least preserved, and that should not be the case with the Black Sword hack. Kingdoms and empires will disappear, and the world is itself is not safe. The setting is at the beginning and at the end of the campaign shouldn't be the same. So it could be the end of the world, or it could be something like the Conan, where you start off as a wandering uh, adventurer, and then wind up being the ruler of your own domain, and that's where the story ends. Um, it has rules for creating a city, so including some names if you need a name, some suggestions on what to people, power, places, problems, what the city's known for. Traveler's Tales. There's some rules for ships. Real simple, really elegant rules for ships in the sea. And then some Traveler's Tales about how long was the trip, and then what happens during the journey. So you don't really have to play out an entire encounter. You can just say, "Hey, this happened," and you learn something, or you can turn it into an encounter. Um, and then we've got, as I mentioned, a couple of uh, sample adventures and a sample city. Then there's some appendices. Appendix 1, running the games, or just advice to the game master. Uh, Appendix 2 is advice from the great old ones, and it's just quotes from Robert E. Howard, Michael Moorcock, Fritz Lieber, Fred Saber, and Joe Abercrombie, Pal Anderson. And it's really, they take a quote from the writings of these authors and then say how that informs running the game. For example, Robert Howard, it says, he had learned the jargon while a Corsair. Conan is able to speak to all kinds of people, right? Despite the fact that he's a barbarian. The implication here, like, characters learn languages and even talents if it fits the narrative. Do not mistake the experience and advancement rules, or any of the rules, for a book of law. So, if they're hanging out and they have a couple of adventures in another country, okay, now you can speak the language. You can conversationally at least speak the language of those folks, even if you didn't start off with it. Now, what are some other good ones here? Michael Moorcock. Gods are for children, for little fearful people. So the thing he says here, do gods exist in your setting? Who cares? Faith exists, which makes churches, priests, and fanatics a great source of adventure for your game, whether the gods exist or not, right? Um, so there's several of those in there. The third appendix, the Black Sword hack for the lone adventure, and this is where I'm going to try to get into some solo play. I know I've done some Morkborg solo play, and I want to get back to that, but I want to try my hand at some Black Sword hack solo play for for now. So we'll be maybe doing that for a few episodes here. Um, they've got the bibliography, the Dark Gods Oracle. This is a way that you can, with solo play, or even if you're just kind of world building or not sure what to do when you're running the game, how to use six-sided dice as an oracle to kind of answer questions that you don't know or can't think of, or just want to be surprised yourself. Cosmic usage dice, if you want to give Law and Chaos their own usage die that ultimately kind of gets you to the end. How to run friendly NPCs in combat without having to flesh them out as characters. Then again, there's a sample world, Evelyn's World, which is a fan made world that somebody posted, I think, to their forums. And really, it's really just one page and then a map. Um, Impossible creatures. How to roll up a freakish monster. Strange planes. Where do these portal lead? How do you get back? So you can plane hop, and an idea is not to, you fall through a portal, you get pushed through a portal, you chase someone through a portal, and now you're stuck somewhere. Where are you? And what's the goal to get back, so that you're not stuck there forever? There's some places you can come up with names from different real world languages, and then a couple different versions of character sheet and the glossary. So what the SRD doesn't have are those, as I mentioned. Well, it doesn't have the character sheets, but you can get the character sheets off the website as well. It doesn't have those two sample adventures or that sample city, but everything else is in the SRD. Um, it's a really good book. Like I said, the art is very evocative. I like it. Um, uh, it's quick. I took it. I just got back. We took a few day family vacation. I took it on the plane with me. Just flipped it down in my carry on bag, and easy to cart around, easy to flip through. My only complaint about the book uh, is I wish that the sample adventures in city had been put at the end as an extra appendix, um, because what happens is you have your create your character creation, creating your world, and then you have the stuff that's probably the most important for uh, the game master. Um, you've got uh, the things for kind of what happens on a trip of ships in the sea, and then this is where they put in these bonus materials, and so you've got several pages there before without those it would just go to advice on running the game and some of these other tables in the appendix you might use for like these oracles. And so it's a big section of the book that I'm having to flip through as I ran the game. Um, which if they had just moved those to the back, it wouldn't have disrupted kind of the flow of the rules you need kind of there in the moment. But as it is, they're in like two or three parts of the book that you got to flip back. I mean, it's not a big book, but it's still flipping and turning. I suppose I could tab those pages or get a bookmark or something. But anyway, that's my only. It's a very minor gripe. Um, but that's it. Uh, Otherwise, highly recommend. It's not a super expensive book. The SRD is free. I highly recommend checking out the Black Sword Hack by Kobayashi, published by the Merry Mushman. And I'll put links in the show description. Okay, change of plans. That previous segment is nearly 30 minutes long, so I'm going to call it here, and I will put the character generation, which I had previously recorded in another episode, because that itself is nearly 20 minutes long, and I don't want to put up an hour long episode, so we'll call it good here. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll come back as I dive a little more into the Black Sword Hack in the coming weeks. I hope your new year is off to a great start. And until I'm back, wherever you are out there, take care of yourself and make someone happy today. Thanks for listening to the Arcane Alienist podcast. The music you're hearing is Come and Get It by Scott Holmes Music. The cover art is by Dave Bone. Be sure to check out his stuff at ironseer.com. You can leave me a message. I have my SpeakPipe account linked to the show description. You can also send me an email at arcane.alienist@gmail.com. Just embed a voice memo, or I'll just read the text to your email during a future episode. Once again, thanks so much for listening.